A book in the Old Testament tells the tale of a prophet who was swallowed by a big fish, remained inside it for 3 days, and was then vomited onto shore. This story has been heavily criticised because it sounds simply absurd and unbelievable. Yet it is true that a human can live inside a sea creature, namely a whale. This is evident because there are 3 or 4 records of sailors who have been swallowed by whales and survived. The most notable of these being that of Falkland Islands sailor James Bartley in the late 19th century. According to the record, Bartley fell overboard when he and his crew gave chase to a whale. After half a day, the crew managed to haul the whale on board, which by this time it was dead, and then proceeded in the regular routine of cutting up the blubber fat. Once they reached inside the stomach, Bartley came tumbling out, unconscious. He had been in the whale's stomach for almost a day, and then recounted how it was very hot inside, but that there was plenty of air, and that's what's most important here. So clearly the story of Jonah must be pretty sound. Yet it still doesn't really prove that God exists and that God inspired the story, as one of my scientist opponents pointed out to me in a recent debate, which is a very valid point, and which I cannot explain. But the main point of this explanation was to explain how the story is sound in its facts and what it claims happened. And an also interesting point to make is that when Jonah went to the city of Nineveh, where God told him to go, he was able to preach successfully to the supposedly sinful people because they worshipped a fish god. And what happens when you stay inside of a whale, or trapped inside a whale? You get covered in this white substance. It's a white material, foam. It makes you look sort of, obviously, funny. I mean, Bartley, when he came out of the whale, his friends told how he was covered in this white substance, this foam. It made him look abnormal, even supernatural even. So if Bartley was covered in this foam and he was only in a whale for 1 day, then how covered would Jonah be if he was in a whale for 3 days? I suppose that would have made him look pretty supernatural. And therefore when he approached the city of Nineveh and addressed the people, they would have taken him for the fish god, and therefore they successfully listened to him and his advice from God, and therefore God saved the city. So, this is as good an explanation of the story of Jonah as I can give. I don't think there's much more important points to be covered there. But there you go, the Old Testament can be true. It's all not just a metaphor. And it does have interesting points. If you don't go God's way, as Jonah did, he went on a ship to Spain when God ordered him to go to Nineveh, which is in modern day Iraq. If you do that and go off the course, then God will bring you back, as he did with Jonah.